do teams get lucky with their transfers? And what I mean by that is, hi Rob, I've got a good episode for us today on the AQ podcast, but going to start with, well, I'll let you know, we're going to be talking all about transfers today, a favorite topic, even though it's not the transfer season. And I want to hit you with some pretty tough trivia. I'm going to say, I'll be really impressed if you get any of these. So the trivia question for today is, can you name the 5 most expensive transfers ever in football? So I'm looking for, I'll give you points for who the player was, roughly how much the amount was, and which club do they go from and to. But can you give me any info of the top?
No, that's too much information. That's far too much information. I can maybe guess the top 5. But so what? Mbappe is obviously top. Monaco to PSG. However, it's even millions it was. There was close to 200 million, I believe. I think I'm going to go 200 million. I don't think it's second, but I know Paul Pogba has still got to be 3rd or 4th. Going from Juventus to Man United at that 100 odd million. He was the first one to break that. It's just Enzo Fernandez. I'm going to put Enzo Fernandez in there because he's the other one I remember. I'm going to go rogue. I'm going to go with Caicedo. I'm going to go Mbappe first, Caicedo second, Pogba third, then Fernandez fourth.
The list I actually had was just before, I guess, this season's transfers. So I think Caicedo and Enzo would have come in 4th and 5th because they were both around that 110, 120 million, those two. So they would have come up 4th or 5th. But the top transfer ever that I was surprised to even hear was Neymar from Barca to PSG, because that was 191 million, which I didn't realize there was that much money, which is ridiculous. They paid his release to get him from Barcelona.
I forgot how much that was, but surely Mbappe went for more, didn't he?
So Mbappe, I think,
doesn't matter,
56 million. Yeah, so Mbappe was second. But it's crazy. I think everyone's just forgotten about the Neymar transfer. Anyway, that kind of segues us into the main discussion for today. So the big question I wanted to talk about today is, the question here is, do teams get lucky with their transfers? And what I mean by that is, I think all the teams are doing the same kind of research with regards to buying players. Everyone's trying to look at the stats. They're looking at the personality now. They have a head of scouting recruitment. They're all doing the same things, to be honest, at the end of the day. And whether the player comes to the club and performs or doesn't is kind of luck of the draw. And you can get plenty of examples of a low-hanging fruit, perhaps, for me to go on is Salah when he came from Fiorentina to Liverpool. He was not putting up anywhere near the numbers of goals or assists that he's done at Liverpool. He's just rocked up for 30-odd million and then just been the best player in the Premier League when he wasn't even one of the top players in Serie A when he was there. And then there's players on the flip side where maybe Arsenal bought Pepe, which has been a complete flop. But if you look at his numbers and his stats from him being in the French league, he was, outside of PSG, probably the best player in the league. But it's been a complete flop. So, I want to know your thoughts on it. Do teams just get lucky with the transfers, or is there more to it?
I'm going to go, the outright answer, the one-word answer to this question is no, it's not. It's not luck, or at least not the main factor, is what I'll say. So I'll expand on that, but I don't think luck is the main factor on it, mostly because of the amount of information that you have, that you can access, and how much research you can do. It's not like you're picking a player out of a hat and I've gotten unlucky there. There's a lot of research into it. You can see the style of the players, you can see how well they've done in other leagues and all this stuff. I do think there's an element of luck in terms of how well they do, because I would. It's almost a thing of like it's bad business if they underperform, and it's lucky if they overperform compared to their price, and that's this kind of idea, and I kind of subscribe to that a little bit. If you pay £30 million for a player and he ends up getting you 30 goals a season for 3 seasons, like you've lucked out a bit on the price, because there's still been research. You've still brought this guy in thinking that he's going to be this fantastic player. He's just exceeded expectations. The other side of that is also how much of it's down to coaching, because you look at a guy like Joe Linton, who came in for 40 million, and he was dross. He was useless under Bruce specifically. He was one of our worst players. Everyone wanted him gone, especially me. I hated him beyond belief. And then Eddie Howe's come in, found he can play in the midfield, put him there, and he's probably a £40 million midfielder now. And in this market, he might be even worth more. But I think there's definitely an element of luck, but I think coaching and research is such a big part of it that you can't understate how much of an impact that has on how successful a player can be beyond the transfer.
Yeah. It's interesting that you went into that about the coaching element, because it kind of segues into my follow-up question around, I noticed that it feels like teams in general go through these periods of either very unlucky or very lucky with transfers. So, for example, maybe Liverpool, look at that patch maybe under Rafa Benitez where they fell out of the top 4. And I think you would argue, as they were falling out of the top 4, down to the bottom of like 8th position in the league, they had a lot of what I would maybe describe as unlucky transfers, or transfers that didn't work out, such as the Stuart Downing, and maybe they brought in Balotelli, a player like that just didn't really work out. But then on the reverse, when Klopp came in, almost every transfer felt like it was just overachieving the price. Like Coutinho came in, Suarez came. I think Suarez came in just before Klopp, actually. But you know what I mean? There was like this group of transfers that came in together, and every transfer just seemed to work out fantastically. So, but I mean, maybe one before you give an answer, one more example was on Spurs. I feel like with Spurs, they had a period, because Spurs, before Pochettino came in, they had a whole bunch of transfers that really worked out. So Kane was already at the club and whatever, but Son came in and suddenly he's worked out. Eric Dyer came in, he's really worked out. That Lloris came in for that period was really working out. My point is that all the transfers they made just seemed to work out. So do you put that down to just the coach and the system? Or that's why I think maybe it's a bit of luck in the period, luck of the draw.
I think, like I said, I think luck does factor into it. I'm not gonna sit here and say that there's no room for luck in football, and specifically in transfers, because at the end of the day, especially when you bring in players from overseas, you don't know how successful they'll be. You don't know how well they'll transition into the Premier League. You see a lot of players who will play in the Spanish league, come over to the Premier League, and they can't handle the physicality. French players, there are a lot of French players. Specific, I remember this from Newcastle under Pardew when we had our little French Revolution, and so many of the French players came in and they were really hyped, and then they just couldn't make it. But then they would go back to France and they'd be one of the best players again. And it's just due to the physicality. So I think there is an element of luck there, but I think you can't, like I said before, you can't understate how big a system plays into it, how big a coach plays into it. If for example, you're a Salah player and you have to play under a manager and in a system that plays with an attacking winger, that's how you can't play in the centre, or he can play in the centre, but he would never be very successful. He's not going to do as well under Pep Guardiola as he did under Jurgen Klopp. And that's not me saying Klopp's a better manager than Pep, but it's the fact that Klopp can get more out of a player like Salah that he can than Pep Guardiola could, because he understands the kind of system that Salah wants to work under. And that's where the research comes into it. It's things like that where you can look at some of the best players in the world, but if they don't fit your system and they don't fit the way your manager wants to play, there's no point buying them at all. It's the example I'll have of going the other way is Mudryk for Chelsea. Mudryk, I reckon if Mudryk went to Arsenal under Arteta and the way Arsenal play, he would be considered one of the best signings of the season. I will put my hat on that hat rack. I'm outright say it. If Mudryk played under Arteta, he'd be considered one of the best signings. But Pochettino doesn't like wingers. He's never liked. How many wingers have excelled under Pochettino? He likes players in the middle. Like Dele Alli was fantastic under Pochettino and can't find the form again because he was successful under a manager who worked through the middle. But and that's where, there's definitely luck in players overperforming, but there's a lot to be said for the coaching and the system of the team that the player is coming into.
I think we have some agreements there. I'm slightly on one side of the fence, you're on the other, but I can see your version of events. It's also just interesting what you're mentioning about how like players under certain managers do better. And I think what you were saying as well, like maybe a Haaland does better in a Guardiola system than he would in a Klopp system, for example. So that's also just putting the balance on what you were saying before someone comes blasting in here about the Klopp versus Guardiola debate in the background. Anyway, I think we've sort of agreed to disagree a little bit on the topic, so I'm going to round it out there. But if you as the listener have anything to add to the conversation, do you feel like some of the managers have got lucky with their transfers, or it's all down to the system and coaching? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.